Joining me now, the Breitbart News Washington political editor, Matt Boyle. Matt, let's go ahead and lead with the leading stuff. I understand you're big time and you sat down with the man himself, something I've never done. How'd it go?
Well, look, I got to spend a couple hours with President Trump a couple weeks ago. We talked about everything under the sun, everything you can think of. It was actually the night before that big terrorist attack that we saw at Hamid Karzai International Airport there in Kabul. So even then, before the terrorist attack, President Trump said that it's the most embarrassing moment in the history of the United States. So he was very critical of President Biden on this stuff. Obviously, the next morning, we then saw the horrible suicide bombing that claimed the lives of 13 young American servicemen and women. But we talked about that. We talked about his political future. We talked a lot about his endorsement process. We're working on some bigger stories on that. He also kind of laid out why he thinks what he thinks about the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party, which was a kind of an interesting discussion in that he thinks the Republicans only exist because the Democrats are so bad on policy. So the Democrats are so bad on policy, but they stick together in such a way that the Republicans don't. And it was kind of an interesting critique of the Republican establishment. Some interesting stuff there. And then, obviously he was very critical of Joe Biden, his successor, on everything from COVID to China to obviously Afghanistan, and so much more. He didn't say it outright, but I get the impression that he intends to run again in 2024. There's every reason to believe that. He's in good spirits. He's fired up. He's focused. Reminds me a lot of 2016 Trump. I interviewed Trump a lot in the lead up to the 2016 election. I spent a lot of time with him in 2014, 15, 16, and then did a few times with him as president. You could tell he learned a lot from his time in the Oval Office, from his time as president. But he's also kind of a retro Trump, if you will, right? Like he's kind of going back to that old burn down the whole political class, the establishment. He doesn't care about either political party's establishment, and so on and so forth, as he kind of looks toward the future. The other thing that's really interesting, every candidate in the country that's running on the Republican side in every primary everywhere is trying to get in to spend time with President Trump because his endorsement moves the needle more than anybody else. I think in the history of, I've never seen anything like it. I've been doing this for over a decade. I've never seen anything like a Trump endorsement in my time, and I'm not familiar with anybody ever in the history, or at least in modern history, being able to endorse someone and how Trump can move the needle for them. It's really incredible. So kind of tracking that as he's going through endorsing candidates and setting the Republican Party up in his vision moving forward, moving off the failed visions of the past, the people like Paul Ryan or George Bush and so on and so forth, and moving more in this populist direction.
Okay, do you get the feeling, Matt, that he's worn out by everybody coming in and asking for him to give his blessing, for lack of a better way to put it? Or do you get the feeling that he is still enjoying it? I'm basically this is a long way of me trying to ask, is he still enjoying the political game as he has always seemed to, or does he seem just kind of burnt out and done with it?
No, I don't think he's burnt out at all. I think he loves it. I think he loves being the center of attention. He loves that everybody's jockeying for the endorsement. He gets a kick out of it, right? Like he thinks it's fun. Now, look, I mean, the process of going through interviewing these people that do come in and try to running for Senate, House, governor, whatever around the country. I mean, that is a tedious process of vetting them, spending time with them, getting to know them, so on and so forth. And it's not a game. But at the same time, I think Trump does relish the fact that he is at the center of this. We spent a lot of time in the interview talking about this. He dialed in while we were there on the phone. His political director, Brian Jack, who ran the endorsement process in the Trump White House when he was the White House political director for Trump, he likes the fact that he's able to drive the narrative out there with these endorsements. So I think he's having a lot of fun doing it, and I think you're going to see him engage in a really smart and sophisticated way in a lot of these key primaries around the country. He's very focused on winning. He wants to wipe out those establishment loser Republicans that voted to impeach him in the House and the Senate. And he wants to get out there and campaign. He loves the rallies. He loves giving the speeches. We talked about his speech in Alabama, which he had done just before this interview, just a few days before, and he was all fired up about that. Remember, the everything woke turns to S line. He was very fired up about that. But Trump, I think, enjoys the process. He enjoys the gamesmanship. He likes playing the game.
Okay, I have to ask then, because it's about the Biden purge. The news today is Biden purges a bunch of Trump's military appointees, Kellyanne Conway and others. And what I came on opening the show was saying, good for Joe Biden. That's how politics is done. That's how the game's played. Is the next Republican, be that Donald Trump or others, going to do that? Because we have not traditionally done it, and Donald Trump was shackled by his own government for 4 years because we didn't do it. Is Trump aware of the problems inside the House for next time?
Yes. So this was actually one of the most illuminating questions I asked him. I was like, what do you know now, Mr. President, that you wish you knew when you took over in 2017, that you didn't know then? And how would you do things differently if you got back there in 2024? And he talked about the staff issues, right? Like, so he was like, look, I didn't realize it when I first got there that I was going to be under assault. I was going to be under siege from the day I took over. The way he said it is, he's like, I had two missions: run the country and survive. And I didn't realize that all these people around me that were claiming to be my friend were going to be stabbing me in the back and knifing me. And I think that he's learned. He said that he specifically singled out people like H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, et cetera, as some of the bad ones. And then some of the good ones that he singled out, like that he really liked, were like Rick Grinnell, who was his acting director of national intelligence. He's a huge fan of Rick Grinnell. So I think he learned a little bit from some of the staff battles. And I think that, that was a very illuminating, introspective moment from Trump, almost a rare moment of humility, right? Like, I mean, you don't really see that from Trump outwardly in a public interview or something like that. But it was very illuminating, and I think that he's aware of that issue from the time when he was there. The question is, I mean, look, you won't ever see it until he gets back. If he gets back there, maybe he falls right back into some of those same staffing issues that you saw, where some of these establishment swamp monster types take over again, or maybe he gets control of it and he does something different. But even despite all of that stuff, I do think that he accomplished a lot of historic things as president. You go down the list of everything from the Middle East peace deals to the tax cuts. I mean, there's so much more that President Trump, the energy independence. I mean, we were energy independent for the first time in a generation. So the question is will Trump be able to recreate all of that policy success while at the same time keeping the swamp, the deep state, if you will, at bay? And it's something that he's aware of, and that was pretty clear from the interview.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.